press record on that?
No.
Cool. So I think I just have.
It should have a red dot somewhere in there if it did actually start recording. And I know there are lots of red dots, but
as you can see, we are incredibly technical.
It's interesting because I'm actually thinking of doing a podcast thing at the moment. I'm just planning it.
Can I just say, do audio, don't do video.
Yeah. Don't need to do video. This is an extra pressure.
There's nothing going on.
It's cool though.
It's I think, I mean, it depends what your reason for doing it is, I suppose. I mean, there are some people that think, oh, I'm going to do a podcast, 3 people listened, I'm going to monetize it.
Yeah.
It's so saturated.
Yeah.
But, I mean, as far as we're concerned, we just really enjoy doing it.
That's
fun.
cool. I'm doing it as part of a research project for talking about girls in the industry, and especially with technology, and like getting the science behind basically debunking the myths of which I'm happy to talk about this. Guitars being masculine, computers being masculine. Why is it that girls don't? Why is it this is a workshop full of men and women don't get involved in the nuts and bolts? Like, is it that women just aren't interested and they're more creative with the tools, or is it something like if you don't see it, you don't get taught it, you don't do it?
Yeah, nature, nurture.
Yeah, because there is still a lot of confusion about, genderised like ideas of instruments and technology.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think it's. It's definitely. We see a lot more guys coming through here than we do girls, but I'm seeing more. Yeah. You know, coming in, you know, even just learning guitar, especially. Yeah. It's getting there. Yeah. No, there was a survey. I think it's a 2017 thing of Fender guitars saying 50% are young girls buying guitars, which is great.
Yeah. It's just not really translating into employment and visibility, and especially in colleges it's pretty equal.
I guess that wave will eventually work its way through there, won't it?
Exactly.
And hopefully so. I mean, with our kind of generation, if someone's good enough to do the job, then they ought to be able to do the job, rather than necessarily saying, oh well, we need a guy to do this. It ought to be. And I mean, you know, you can speak to that, I'm sure. Yeah. We sort of haven't started. No. But we've started.
Yeah, go for
it. Which is good. Well, we never really.
It's an organic
start. It's kind of we figured out that we, because otherwise it's just like hi.
Yeah.
Red you know, it's just like, hi. So tell us about yourself. So I think we've hit something quite interesting anyway.
Oh yeah, no, it's really, really good. So what are you which college are you working at to do the?
I started work. So I finished this 2-year project with this South African artist called Nakane, and I was musical directing, and that went through to September, and I sort of turned 40 in June 2019. Finished with Nakane in September, and kind of made a choice to not be touring anymore and to step back, and then obviously got pregnant and then so I'm in the middle of that, and so that's obviously ruled out touring, and then I was just kind of thinking, you know, what do the next 10 years hold? I've been touring since I was 18, just turned 40. Wow.
We did
quite mad.
The matter,
and I love it, and it's such a huge part of the kind of musician I am is I do my solo projects, and I'm also a session player, and I tour with other artists, and the collaboration aspect of it is really important to me. But there comes a time when there's only so much like travelling and being away you can deal with, and I really needed a break, and just at the same time, like this offer from ICMP, so that's the Institute of Contemporary Music Performance, offered me I mean, I've done a few mentoring and masterclasses with them over the years, and a guy called Ben Jones got in touch and said, do you want to do some part-time teaching? I was like, yeah, actually, that would be really nice. So I started doing that, teaching like live arrangement workshops, performance, and just sort of a bit of generalised songwriting, and then through the college I've got involved with the British Council and PRS doing like workshops. So I went to Moscow with the British Council and did some workshops with like young Russian students who are sort of stuck in a very difficult world in Moscow. That's where we went, of just like no industry whatsoever and no support, and you feel so lucky being in London because that was not, you know, my experience when I was a teenager. And so then I kind of had lots of inspiration to sort of think about setting up my own workshops and getting young girls involved, and this has been, I've never really talked about being a woman in music. I never really wanted to make a big deal out of it, but I found myself at this stage where it's become just quite a big question, and just looking for answers, and it's really interesting. So I'm really enjoying that change of speed.
Yeah. And so going back to the fact that you've been on tour since you were 18, pretty much.
It's crazy.
What was your kind of journey, and also talking about picking up guitar and other instruments, whatever, what was your path into that, and at what age did you get into that?
I have two big sisters and they were both musicians, and my big sister is 8 years older than me, so when she left home for university I was like 10, and she left me her guitar, and she would send me mixtapes, and she was a musician, and I kind of idolised her. And
what kind of music was she into then?
She was doing she was collaborating with I can't remember his name, the guy who was involved in Tricky's, Max and Quay, and Ben something or other, and she was doing a lot of sort of co-writes, and she was like almost signed, and then in later years she actually became a film composer, but I guess like in my mind she was kind of like this like Alanis Morissette, Beverly Craven like solo artist, and then I used to see her play in bands, so I kind of wanted to be that. And then my other sister became like a bass player in Zoot Woman and Warm Jets, and did a lot of cool like indie stuff, so that was always going to be my trajectory. And then just by sheer luck somehow I answered an ad in the back of the Enemy when I was like 15, and went for an audition and met the singer from the band Nightnurse, who I played with for 2 years, and she was like this Israeli ex-army hardcore lesbian who took me back to her house in Plaistow and sat me in her bedroom and was like, right, play me something. And
no pressure.
And I just played with like some Hendrix, and I was really into Britpop at the time. It was prime time for that stuff, and I was like, I really like Blur and Oasis, and she was like, this is not Britpop, and I was like, I like David Bowie too, and she's like, okay, fine. And sort of got into that band, and then spent like 2 years doing all the venues you could possibly think of whilst I was still at school.
So that's around London at this point?
Around London, and we rehearsed at this place called the Fortress Studios in Angel. It's moved now, but it was originally in Angel, and
I think I still owe them money for rehearsal.
It was a really interesting place to be because it just had all the bands there that I was I had pictures of my wall, and then I'd be rehearsing, and Pulp would be there, Elastica were there, and Ash were there, so I met them there. Yes, and then the main connection was because Tim moved in with my boyfriend at the time.
Right.
And they were a three-piece, and they just they were always looking towards America rather than like the Britpop scene, and they were enthralled to Nirvana, and so originally they wanted to be that three-piece, but then they had been on tour with Weezer, and they wanted like that extra guitar sort of for
even
power.
Nirvana had an extra guitar when they toured as well.
Right.
So
they sort of, I think my boyfriend said, you should go and check out Charlotte's band, and they did, and then asked me to join just before I did my A-levels. So as I was doing my A-levels, I knew that I was going to join Ash.
That must have been pretty crazy.
It was a really mad time, because also my parents split up when I was 16, and so I lived with my mum for a few months, and then I lived with my dad, and at the same time I just wasn't going to school, but nobody cared.
No one
was like really sort of aware of it, and I really felt like, in hindsight, I'm really thankful because they were a lot older than me, the guys at Nightnurse, and I sort of got quite well protected. Like I kind of kept away from all the chaos, and there was a lot of chaos and a lot of drugs, and around the Fortress scene and around that Britpop scene, it was like incredibly hedonistic. And I sort of managed
not to get drawn into it.
I kind of sort of enjoyed it, but didn't get drawn into that sort of dark side of it.
Yeah.
So that is interesting that you say that, because we had a guy in who does loads of lessons online, and he said when he was like 13 or something, Justin, in Australia, going out and playing at biker bars and things, but the rest of the band were just like, you don't touch, whatever goes on, you don't touch this guy, like, don't look at him. I've seen enough of that one.
Yeah, it was cool, and I think they knew that I was going through quite a mad time, and obviously in my mind I was like, I'm in a band, that's the most important thing, and but I think they could see that there was like trouble going on behind the scenes, and so they were very protective and very much like, don't hit on her, because there was like just so many men around, and I was like pretty naive and stupid.
Could have said yes to things that you should say no to, but they didn't. They kind of protected you from even getting into that situation. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, as much as they could, but it was definitely
minimised,
and they were nice. I've always worked with really nice people, which is just been
fortunate.
Really fortunate. Yeah.
Wow. So, what was it like going on tour at 18?
Well, joining Ash was a completely different scene to being a Nightnurse, because Nightnurse, we had a record deal. It was all very independent, and they were much more of a Pixies, My Bloody Valentine sort of alternative music, and I never aspired to really be like in this huge band. But then the Ash thing happened, and so it was like jumping up a massive level. So instead of doing like the Dublin Castle and Bull and Gate, it was like festivals in front of thousands of people, and headlining the Astoria and Glasgow Barrowlands, and it was quite mad. And I don't know, I can't access my mind at that time. I think you just sort of just get on with it.
I'm doing this.
Yeah. And suddenly, there's a huge team around you, and I didn't have like an immediate connection with the guys. There was always like a sort of, I felt new, and I was from London, they were from Northern Ireland. I'd had this quite a like interesting chaotic upbringing, and they were from quite nice stable families, and there was like a sort of, we didn't have a lot in common, I guess, other than the music thing. So there wasn't like an instant connection, and that really took time. So I think it just took me a long time to sort of relax into it and get my head around the situation.
And do you think that you you became more comfortable more quickly with Nightnurse than you did with Ash, or was it because it was so intense with Ash, it was a different thing, because you would go to a gig and then go home with Nightnurse, whereas Ash, it's like on the bus, off the bus, play the gig, back on the bus?
Yeah, well, with Nightnurse it was much more of it was a team, and you were working towards like a group goal.
Right, okay.
Whereas I think with Ash, they'd already had the #1 album, and
you were more of a bolt-on.
I wasn't involved in that. Yeah. We're in it together, this is our band, and we're going to take over the world. So it was kind of like, and also with Nightnurse, like, I didn't have any money, I was completely skint, and none of us had any money. And then suddenly with Ash, you get given a monthly wage, and it was like dealing with that as well, sort of like, okay, I've got some money, and trying not to like be an idiot with it, which I failed. Yeah, I failed with that. And so yeah, I think the whole thing was just quite. It was so new and so overwhelming. And then I was doing radio interviews, pretty much like straight away, and doing all the press side of stuff. And
wow.
And that was weird because, I mean, I was still like very insecure and didn't really know what I should be saying. There was no like media training or anything, and it was big news at the time because they would seem to be quite a laddish band and had the whole thing of like Sick Party as the secret track on 1977, which was them throwing up, and they were huge drinkers.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it was like a real big deal that there was a girl, and so all the headlines were like, it's a girl, and then so I had that attention as well because it was never made a big deal that I was a girl with Nightnurse. In fact, even having guitar lessons, no one ever said to me, oh, this is interesting or different. Whereas suddenly it was like that was a main focus.
But that's interesting that it was the media who were saying it's a girl, but the band were just like playing guitar.
I think,
or there was an element of that.
I'm sure there was an element of that. I'm sure there was an element of, this will be sort of interesting, or newsworthy, but ultimately, I did have to do an audition.
Right.
And I could play, and I think it was just. There was probably many different factors to it, but to be honest, I mean, I had incredibly short hair, I was stick thin, and I was a complete tomboy. So there was no like sexy element to it for the aesthetics. So that wasn't. There definitely wasn't a part of it for the boys. It took me quite a few years to sort of grow into that image, that rock chick thing.
But is that something that you felt kind of pushed into, or you were just like...
No, I think that was pretty organic.
I'm a girl, I'm going to dress like a girl.
Yeah, well, I was definitely more of a Kim Deal, Chrissie Hynde. Those are the kind of people I looked up to. Not that I didn't really have that many like female guitar icons. I just didn't feel comfortable in a sort of look at me kind of way. Yeah. So it took a few years, and then it sort of did turn into me and Tim being, sort of on the front cover, and then turning into a bit of an indie, as who was it? There was some Melody Maker poster I saw where it was me, and then on the back it was Louise Weiner from Sleeper, or Justine Friedman. It was that sort of vibe. I don't think any of those women were like overtly sexy. They were just sort of cool.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where I was at.
Oh, I had a question, and then you started saying other interesting things. It's gone completely out of my head now. Oh, I know, the confidence thing.
Yeah.
So, how long did it take you? I can remember the other thing now. How long did it take you to feel more comfortable in yourself, less insecure, and what do you think it was that it took?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of alcohol involved. Like the first year, just to get on stage, just to get through a gig. And
that didn't affect your playing, obviously. But
it did.
It did.
Yeah.
Right. Were there words had?
Yeah, the manager actually, they isolated my track. Yeah.
Oh no! Wow. Name and shame.
It was brutal, and it was the backing vocals as well as the playing.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And I mean, it was kind of all of us, but I think for me, it was good. I'm glad he did that, the manager, because I was like, okay.
Hold the mirror up.
Yeah.
You need to see that.
Get a grip. So yeah, I think that was like a year or two, but I was 18, and it did take about 5 years for the drinking culture to subside. It wasn't until I was about 24, 25 that I was like, right, let's try and put a lid on this.
Rein it back.
It was just the way it was. It was like, the culture at the time was like several shots of Sambuca before you go on stage, and drink a bottle of vodka whilst you're on stage, and come off stage and have another drink, and then get carried to bed. I mean, I remember turning 21 and getting carried to bed into my bunk, and that it was like that for a while. So I think I used that for confidence. And then I don't know, I think I just sort of got my shit together, and I started dating. I went out with Edgar Wright when I was 21, and we were together for like 4.5 years. And Edgar was incredibly committed to his craft, and he's a huge director now, and he was doing Shaun of the Dead, and then he did Hot Fuzz, and through being together I kind of started to focus more on my own songwriting and what I wanted to do, and it was more of a sort of turning away from like the ravages of the road and being more like, okay, let's actually dig a bit deeper and be more creative. And then, but the touring was constant with Ash. It never really stopped. It was a huge part of my 8 years with them. There was never a moment where we weren't either in the studio or on the road. So then it turned into like negotiating relationships around all that stuff, but I think ultimately after a few years of being like at university, like being a crazy fool, and actually having a really good time, I then through being with Edgar, that's sort of like starting to think about being an artist and writing in a much more serious way.
And so by kind of digging around deeper inside, you worried less about what people were thinking about you and more about what you, like the substance that existed inside you, and I'm not made of paper, there's something there, and I can I can do my own thing and stand on my own feet, and
I think it's really important the people you surround yourself with, because with the band it's the 3 guys in the band, and then there's like 10 other guys on the road with you. There's like tour manager, monitor engineer, lighting engineer. You would not get that now, and that's very much your like on the road family. But then away from that, I sort of built up another family of friends and like supportive artistic people who wanted me to or encouraged me to write. So the first solo album I did was it just had a bunch of songs that I knew wouldn't be used for Ash, and my friend was like, I've got married to Eric Drew Feldman, who works with the Pixies, used to be in Captain Beefheart and Perubu and like all this amazing stuff. He said he'll record your album, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I spoke to Eric, and because I'd sent him demos, and he said, my friend Rob Ellis, who's PJ Harvey's drummer and an amazing producer, he's up for drumming. Do you want to come to LA and do it? And it was a very like sort of matter of fact, chilled out thing. And I went to LA and recorded an album, and then sort of built this team of older, again a lot older people who were basically saying what you do is really good, and sort of introducing me to other types of music and other creative people. So I sort of built my own team, because with Ash it was like that team was
set and you were
set,
plumbed in.
and I couldn't I didn't feel like there was much space for me to sort of bring my own songs or identity or creativity. And I had some co-writes, but ultimately Tim and Mark were the main songwriters, and so even then I guess that pattern of like working on your solo records, touring with someone else, it's just always been a part of my the screen's gone off. It's gone.
Oh yeah, because it's the 29 minutes.
Was that like a...
Better check that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's another technical thing.
Okay.
So because they're...
When you get boring, the screen goes...
Yeah, exactly. So did you... Did you feel sort of 100% part of Ash as like the unit, or did you?
No, not really. No, it was never really like that. I mean, I did. There was probably when we did Free All Angels, because when I joined, so they'd had their #1 hit, and then hit record, and then when I joined. Tim was sort of going through this difficult second album, a bit of writer's block. So we sort of went on this residential studio and to write and demo, and he was having a tough time. And then the album, when it was out, it did okay, but it wasn't. I think it was deemed a relative to the first one, not as successful. And so everyone was a bit bummed out, but of course for me, I was like, yeah, this is amazing.
Still good.
Yeah. What are you talking about? So there was that disconnect, and I was never quite on the same page as them. And then we did Free All Angels after that, which was #1 record. And I suppose that was probably the best time, because then it really did feel like a team.
Yeah, sort of all of you going forward as one.
Yeah. And then afterwards, I mean, that record sort of gave birth to a lot of American touring and just constant being away, constant promotion. And then I think we released like something like 6 or 7 singles from that. All the videos, like all of that stuff was quite relentless and full on. In the time when you're doing Top the Pops, CD UK.
Oh God, I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. It was like so much fun. Big Breakfast we did.
Oh, cool.
We did like this Big Breakfast thing with Darius. Remember Darius from is it Pop Idol?
Yes.
Yeah. So that world where like the pop world and the indie world was sort of like, if you did Countdown UK, you'd see the Spice Girls or S Club 7, and it was fun. And a really good time, but really like hard. It was hard work.
How do you deal with the sort of on the road, off the road stuff? Mind you, it sounds like you were kind of just at it all the time, but that kind of decompression from like the tour bus to then you don't have anything to do or anybody telling you where you've got to be next.
Yeah, it's definitely hard, and I can see because I had my own project going on, so when I wasn't doing Ash, I was writing my own thing or recording, and I can see if you didn't have that, it would be really difficult, and it's hard to, especially, you know, I see my time with Ash as being like a time pre-technology, so you're also not communicating at all with your family, your friends, you're not texting, you're certainly not on Facebook, you're not connecting.
Kind of forget about that now.
Yeah, so when you come home, it's really hard to explain to someone what's been happening. So I would see my sister and she'd be like, so how's it been? Like 2 months away, and I'm like, what? Like, where do you even begin? It's like it was really hard to relate, and also you miss your friends' birthdays, weddings, like big events that you're not around for, so your whole world is really in that bubble, but you know, you forget that actually those like 4 a.m. Bonding drinking sessions on the tour bus does not mean that you're best friends with someone, because when you go home there was like no contact. It's not like you'd be like, I'll see you down the pub.
You said that you built the team around you for off tour, and was that a conscious thing because you had experienced the post tour like hinterland?
It was definitely as I got older, I definitely missed being at home, and I started to find the relentless touring like really difficult, because especially with Free All Angels, when suddenly it was America became part of the mix. So before that it was like Australia, Japan, like world touring, or 8 weeks in Europe, and then massive UK tours, and then suddenly it turned into like 2 months in America in a van, like doing it the old school way, doing lots of college radio tours, and It's brutal. It's really hard, and I was the only girl. I was always the only girl, and at that point, I just started to really feel it, and I was like, okay, I'm not. And I started to feel the inability to like be creative, to write. So you can't fucking do anything when you're in a band.
You're just a cog in a machine.
Yeah, and I think at that point, laptops are kind of like iPods were about. And I do remember learning Pro Tools in the back of a van, like for as long as the plug would last. There were no 4-ways. And so it would just be endless hours of staring out the window and kind of just boredom and alleviated by getting drunk in these like mad hinterlands of malls. So you'd stop off, you'd have a Super 8 and you'd cross over this motorway to get to the mall, which is where you'd have dinner.
Yeah. And
the only option was a Barnes and Noble, read a book or see a film, and it just became Groundhog Day, and so I started to just really want to be at home, and I missed my boyfriend, and I wanted to do my own work, and it just wasn't really. There was just no place for it with Ash. So I guess, I did start to get a bit more frustrated. And then after Free All Angels, Meltdown was the last record I did, and we went to America. But before we did the session, I went to LA to record my first solo record. And in the spirit of inclusivity, I released it on Ash's manager's label. And I was basically saying, I'm not leaving and I just want to do this record. And they were like, fine. So I did that. So I spent a month or two in LA, and then joined the boys in LA to record Meltdown, which was like a really long process. And we were staying in this house in Beverly Hills, which I guess was cheaper than like putting us up in a hotel. And staying in like this ridiculous, I think it was Rodeo Drive. And I didn't really have much to do. I would go into the studio and do some backing vocals, or like an afternoon of guitars.
So was that writing in the studio as well, or
probably a bit of both? I think we had already demoed it all, and we went into the studio with Nick Raskulniks, I think his name is, who had produced Foo Fighters, like this big American. So it was going to be our big American rock sort of record. So I was in LA for like 2 or 3 months with really like a lot of time on my hands, and it just kind of got sucked into not feeling good.
Yeah.
It's not a good place to be if you're not in a good place.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to really feel like I really, really don't want to sort of do this anymore. And I did try to communicate this to the manager, but I think the message I got really was like, well, what else are you going to do if you don't do this?
Thanks, mate.
Yeah. And there was one point where, at some point, I'll write this down because there's too many like stupid stories. But yeah, I did meet up with the manager, and I said, I think I'm just going to fly home tomorrow, and he was kind of like, well, I understand how you feel, but what are you going to do for the rest of your life? And I was like 25 or 24.
I could do a lot.
Yeah. And in hindsight, I think, you asshole. I really just wanted someone to be like, I understand. I hear you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's going to be alright.
Can we do anything to help you
out?
Exactly.
Yeah. But it was really like you're on your own, and I couldn't. It seems ridiculous now because I'm quite close to Tim, and we see each other whenever we can. Like, cause he lives in New York, and he comes to every single gig that I do in New York. He comes and we hung out, and
that's cool.
It's very sweet. And at the time, like the idea that I could directly go to Tim and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm feeling really bummed out."
Yeah.
It was impossible, and it had to go through this sort of like the manager was like the go-between, and now it seems crazy, but I think that's just it had built up over so many years to that point, for whatever reason. I mean, a huge part of it is just being young and not understanding how to communicate properly. But yeah, why I couldn't just say to them, I'm really unhappy and I want to go, I just don't know. But that was just the way it was. So it came out in this like weird, fucked up way.
Yeah.
Where we were probably all feeling a bit unhappy, but not being able to sort of talk about it.
Yeah, it's amazing how sort of easy communication makes things.
Yeah.
Just talking.
Yeah. And these are tools you learn over, many years. And I kind of think, maybe if I was, if I'd come from a different... looking back on it and having gone through my mid-30s therapy, you see some of these patterns when you're younger, and then you're basically like, I'm kind of in another dysfunctional family where no one's talking, and it's funny how those patterns sort of repeat, and I can see it so clearly, but obviously at the time you have no clue, and you're just feeling very like isolated.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was no support, and I don't know. Maybe things are different now. Maybe people are more like aware of the mental health implications of this stuff.
That is becoming such a bigger conversation in itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which can only be a good thing.
Can only be a good thing, and if anyone ever said that to me, I would be like, warning signs. This person needs help. And as it was, I kind of went through that record and then toured it, and absolutely just did not want to be on any of that tour, and was really deeply unhappy.
And did that manifest as alcohol
no,
intake
actually,
again, or was it like, I'm not going to drink anything because I want to like just be
I became a bit of a yoga freak.
It's a good way to take it, I suppose.
Yeah, which as a 40-year-old, fucking thankful for that, because I also had lots of like back problems from the guitar, and so I started yoga for that reason, and then it became like a sort of, it really helped me on the road to get my head together, and that started me not drinking as much, and just sort of growing up a bit and trying to, and then being with Edgar, who was making fucking films and being successful, and I think we were both like, come on, let's do something with our lives, rather than just like sort of withering away on the backseat of a bus,
just drifting,
wasting time,
which can so easily happen if you're not careful about it. So anyway, ultimately it ended with Tim sort of saying to me, kind of think maybe you should leave, and I said, yeah, I think I should. And it was kind of done in sort of a nice way. I think the intentions were good, but
execution not so good.
The execution, like the face-to-face execution, was great actually, and it was a good moment because. And it was a moment for us all to be like, and I was like, yeah, it's not really working for me. And then he was like, yeah, it's not really working for us either. And it was very amicable, but during that meeting, it was like, let's just sit with it and think about it. And then that night they denounced it on social media and on their website.
Okay.
And I saw it and I was like, oh right.
So is this us sitting with it?
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like sitting.
Yeah, I guess it's happened. And I don't know, whatever. It's just another one of those sort of things you look back and think, that was disappointing. I just put it down to sort of lack of just sort of social skills, enforced by being in this mad bubble.
Truman Show.
Of just not having to deal with like reality at all.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I left and that happened, then suddenly it was like, fuck. Reality was very real.
So it was like the next 6 months after that, or that bit after that, what happened?
I went to Italy and I recorded a record and just went mad in Italy, and spent, because my thinking was, so the first record I did, Grey Will Fade While Still With Ash, sold like 15,000, and I thought, okay, well, I'll do another record and it will sell 30,000. But then in that process, the record industry sort of crashed. Streaming started to happen, or illegal streaming, illegal downloads, and I went to Italy with Rob Ellis to produce this record, and kind of without really thinking straight, spent a small fortune on the studio.
Right.
So I just ran away and hid. I didn't want to be at home.
Yeah.
So that's what you meant by going mad.
Yeah.
Just I poured tons of money into.
I just couldn't face being in London, so I just went to this tiny little place. It was like this I can't even remember where it was. This tiny little studio, and just holed up there writing and recording, and like did some okay stuff. Spent far too long there, got drunk, and ended up breaking up. My relationship fell apart, and then I moved out of my flat whilst Edgar was away, and I think maybe it was a bit like, okay, well, everything's gonna burn. Like I'm just gonna make everything like fall down and go back to
Phoenix or
zero.
bust.
Yeah.
Like burn it all, and if I come back, then great.
Yeah.
If not, then well, I had to burn it all anyway.
It was quite something. It was like this huge detonation of like the real world just rushed back in after sort of not really being around for anything. Suddenly everything was like, oh god.
Was it a phoenix on the cover of Meltdown? Was it?
Yes.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah. Rising from the ashes. I've had that headline. So yeah, and then I eventually set up a label to release that record, and you know, it lots of people like it, but for me it just represents like madness, and it was just like really bad timing to like put so much money into something that just, and in the end it just didn't. I think it sold like 5,000 or something. And you know, in the days of like pressing up vinyl, like all the singles we did, all the B-sides, all the remixes, all the videos, and I look back on that and I'm like, oh my god, this is so much money being spent. And then because I had no like education with any of the financial stuff, so through that I kind of came through that whole like very sort of weird period, and then I was at the end of my 20s, and somehow got into Session World. That was the last 10 years of my life. So yeah, so I had like a sort of 3-4 year period post Ash of like, holy shit, readjusting to the world, having like a major low after the major high, which is fucking inevitable and had to be done, and then sort of picked myself back up, and the first session gig I got was with Brian Ferry, like doing a corporate gig in Kazakhstan. It was completely surreal, and then so I did a load of like private jets and corporate trips to like Russian millionaires' birthday parties, Sardinian yachts, and it was very weird but wonderful and really good fun.
And how do you think, because we kind of just jumped from you having this really terrible time, and then I want to ask another question about the terrible time, but how did the session thing start? Because that, like, I don't know who listens to these things, but like personally, when I was 18, 19, sitting in the basement playing guitar, what's your path into that? We've already gone through what happened with Ash, but how did you go from spending a small fortune on trying to sell a record that didn't sell into, you know, what was that connection that got you onto the Brian Ferry thing?
Yeah, so after I put the Deep Blue out, then I realised that it hadn't worked in a sort of
I need some money in my bank account.
Yeah.
Kind of way.
And also, like, you know, post-Ash tax bills and all that stuff. And
dear.
And
You're
and
not
sort
the
of
first person to get musicians and tax bills.
It's very predictable and sad. So, yes, there was definitely a period of, okay, what am I going to do? And even thoughts of, like, okay, well, I guess I'll just go back to school and I'll do something else. And realising that the shift from being in a band to being a normal person is actually pretty impossible, because I had no qualifications, had no work experience. So it's not, I think rather romantically I thought, I'll work in foils and have a band and I'll do this. And I was like, what, you need a fucking degree to work in foils? Like, you need qualifications, you need experience. I had nothing. The only thing I could really get was bar work. And so that was quite confronting. And then obviously to study you need to pay money to get qualifications, or a loan, and it just didn't feel like that made any sense at the time. So I will say the person that I sort of turned to was Alan McGee, because I knew Alan just through being around. And he had a DJ night at the Borderline, and he said, do you want to just do some DJing? So I started doing some DJing at some various club nights. And his wife was in a band called Client, Kate, and he said, they need a bass player, do you want to go on tour with them? So I did that for a bit, and then that idea, the idea of playing for other people sort of got into my head, because I never really thought about the session thing. I never knew it was a thing. And then I can't really remember what happened, but somehow someone had recommended me for the Brian Ferry thing. And then after that, I auditioned for Bat for Lashes, and that was the first proper session gig, and that was a huge deal for me, because I was 30 and Natasha was 30, Natasha Khan. And
what kind of era was that then?
That was Two Sons, so her second record.
Okay, because I saw her at All Tomorrow's Parties on the first record, I think. So I was one, she had two girls singing with her, and I wondered whether one of those might have been you. That was weird.
I was like the second lineup, and it was like Sarah Jones was on drums. So Sarah is now like playing with Harry Styles. Is like an amazing drummer.
Okay.
Ben Christophers was playing, was sort of MDing and playing all sorts of stuff. Now Ben is now like this incredible co-writer producer, and so every single gig that I've got since Bat Flashes has been linked to Bat Flashes. So I think as soon as you're in that sort of, because Ben produced Nakane's record, which is the very last project that I then became musical director, and he recommended me for that. So it's one of those funny worlds that once you get into it, it's actually quite a small world, and you end up getting recommended for things. So through 2 years with Bat for Lashes, and the amazing thing about Bat for Lashes, so yes, I turned 30, and it was all women. So there was Sarah, me, and Natasha, the tour manager, was female. The merch girl, Catherine, is a really good friend of mine. She was like sort of a bit younger than us, and suddenly there was like, instead of getting on the tour bus and it being drinking whatever, it was like herbal tea and face creams and
slightly different experience.
Oh my god, it was, and even like when we, because Natasha's such a massive hippie, so even getting onto the tour bus, the tour manager was like handing out gemstones to put on your pillow, and my initial reaction was, what the fuck is this? Oh my god, how am I going to deal with this? But actually it was like this whole beginning of me just sort of like letting my guard down, and I call it like the softening, because with Ash I just had this like armour. I was quite I guess one of the boys never asked for help, never wanted anyone to help me carry my bags, never wanted special favours, never wanted to be the sort of hysterical, crying, emotional person, or the, you know, a stereotype. But with Bat for Lashes, it was completely the opposite, and all of that was allowed and encouraged.
Yeah.
And it was really nice. So I kind of, at the end of that experience, it was kind of got back to myself and really embraced that whole like lifestyle, which I guess now you would call like wellness.
Yeah.
But that was sort of the beginning of it, and I'd already been doing the yoga, and I turned into someone who like kind of just had my shit together way more at the end of that process. And then I did another solo record whilst I was doing Bat for Lashes, which some might say was foolishness, but I just did.
And while you were doing Bat for Lashes, was that while you were on the road with Bat for Lashes?
Promoting it whilst I was on the road, to doing like interviews in the morning, and then because we were in the States, so doing like interviews at weird different times. I mean, it wasn't a huge release, but that album got like really good reviews, and I paid for it all myself, and Alan Moulder mixed it. I sold a guitar to pay for him. And
he is great.
Yeah, he's amazing, and he did me a really good deal. And
he's great on many levels, not just for the mixing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's super.
He's a good guy, and I kind of got that record out of my system, and then in my mind I was kind of like, okay, that's 3 records. But you know, the way that it works for me is that I'll put my money into my own projects, and then I'll have to fund it by touring with someone else. And then fortunately it just kept rolling in, so Katie Tunstall asked me to tour, so I spent 2-3 years with Katie, and then after that I did another solo record. And then I toured with Birdie for 2 years, which was incredible, and then I hopped straight onto the Nakane thing, which is musical directing, which is a nice step up from doing the session work, and I really just, it's my favourite thing that I've done, which kind of takes me to now. So it's been like quite an amazing like 10 years really of collaboration with other people.
That's a pretty cool journey.
a few other things.
Yeah.
In between, but yeah, ultimately it's been like a 10-year sort of collaborations. I would say, of like taking inspiration from whoever you work with, because especially as a guitar player, every session gig requires a new pedal board or a new setup or a new thought process, and then you take, like with Bat for Lashes, I definitely was inspired by her all-round aesthetic and her vision. With Katie, I was inspired by her just fucking attitude of like just doing shit on her own, and she's like a complete powerhouse. And with Birdie, I loved the band. It was like such a gorgeous bunch of people, and the MD Richard Evans was a real inspiration, and I've made lots of friends from those, like everyone's a friend. Which I didn't really have with those Ash years. It was isolated. And maybe, I don't know, maybe now because of social media and everyone's just like way more connected, or maybe because the industry's a bit harder, people are much more open to like networking channels, and everyone's supportive of each other, and it's much more the kind of atmosphere that nurtures creativity rather than...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing now, because it's, if you're obviously good at what you do and a nice person, then you're more likely to get hired than if you're a pain in the arse. And because we can be seen so much easier nowadays, that if you are a bit of an arse, then you can get found out so much easier. And then people won't want to work with you, because there'll be something coming
That's
out.
what I say to the students. It's like, it's not about how technically good you are.
Just be nice. Basically.
Be nice and sort of just like be nice and be good and be professional and like all that boring stuff, and you'll do okay. But it's there's still a massive disparity between female musicians and male musicians, and there's a report that's just come out. This woman called Vic Bain, I think it's called the Equalizer report, and it talks about that disparity, and I kind of knew it was bad, but I didn't realise it was still that bad. And I think I've been in this bubble of like working mostly with women actually over the last 10 years. So in my mind I'm like, there's loads of women, loads of female, but I think in the greater perspective, it's actually still quite a relatively unusual thing to see. And it is definitely getting better. Without doubt. But even I think for me it's more like having women in the studio now and getting like female producers and female engineers and having that, because my whole experience with Ash was there was just no women anywhere. And
that means you'll make a certain type of record as well, doesn't it? When there's a female influence in anything, in any aspect of life, the end product will be different. You can see the balancing effects of, especially on tour, of having women. As soon as you take someone
the tour bus story sounded, it's polar opposites really, isn't it?
It's complete opposite, and it's it's good to have that balance. I think it's the same for the studio, and it's funny with Meltdown, because when we recorded that record in LA, it was in this big LA studio, big American producer, Nick, who was absolutely lovely and sweet. And I went in to do some backing vocals, and there's just a TV in the corner with just pornography on, like 24/7, constant. And I had to say, do you mind if you just like turn that off? And they were like, oh yeah, sure. Like, it hadn't even occurred to them that it would be a thing.
That's bizarre.
And it's just kind of like that sort of, when you feel like I'm really sorry, I don't want to bum you out, but whereas now I cannot imagine that happening. There's a much greater awareness now of like that sort of insensitivity. But all it takes is one woman to point it out, and then everyone knows about it. But if you don't have women in that arena, in that world, like nothing changes. And in the composer world, there's a lot of really interesting women, like doing like Anna Meredith, Carly Parody, Mika Levi, Hilda, I can never pronounce her surname, the Finnish composer who scored Joker and Chernobyl, and also in that world there are like big studio engineers who are female, but still in that sort of like commercial pop industry, not so much.
Tides are turning.
Tides will turn. Yes.
Well, and with that wave of girls buying guitars, even it sort of has to filter through, because if it's 50-50 now, that's going to eventually come to fruition, and they're going to get to the top of their game, and then it's going to be you'll be closer to parity.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. It's like that girls want to learn this stuff, and you can see that in the figures of education. But it's the employability. So I think there was like 9,000 and something publishing deals signed in 2017, 8,000 of which were male. So it's getting that connection with like the industry signing and investing in women, and also like male artists wanting to work with female musicians, because most of the people who've employed me have been female solo artists who just want to have women on tour. So it's kind of up to men to want to work with women and to give them those opportunities. You see, so like Sarah Jones playing with Harry Styles. I mean, obviously that's a really amazing thing for hundreds and thousands of young women to see when they go to Harry Styles gigs. That's what we need. We need that visibility.
It'd be really interesting to know about that 1,000 girls to 8,000 guys. What drives that? Is it girls are trying to get publishing deals and being turned down, or is it that they don't feel that they're good enough to apply for it?
Not as pushy.
Not as well. Yeah, that. I'm sure that's the thing.
That's definitely one part of it. I mean, I don't know. So part of my exploration into this area is to find out like the reasons behind this, and the report does have some key notes of what we can do, and some of it does stem from education. But anyway, through talking to PRS, there are so many initiatives actually doing really amazing stuff. And even I found out through a friend that there is like if you having a baby and you want to go on tour, you can apply for funding. So there's like a maternity aspect to it, but nobody knows about this stuff unless you're told. And so I feel like it's like getting all these initiatives, like pushing them out there and being like, you can apply for it, because yes, there is a very real thing that men will apply for funding or go for it or sort of blag their way through a thing, and women are a lot more hesitant or reticent to apply for this stuff, and it is out there, and so it just needs to sort of be, people need to be made aware of it a lot more. So go to the PRS, go to the PRS website, and there's a fund called Hitmaker Fund, which does offer funding for various situations. But the maternity thing's interesting.
It is an interesting
because
thing.
You know, you don't have any protections as a self-employed musician. There's no such thing as maternity leave, or so it's interesting that that's there, and then you know it really does affect your choices of like, okay, well I can't go on tour. But then through talking to a friend, I've heard about female artists putting together like creches on tour, so like having other musicians who have babies, and then they all travel together and have someone looking after the kids whilst they're on sound checking or doing the gig. It can be done. It's not like end.
You've got to put the thought in and actually put it together and be clever about it.
I'm assuming you're not going to be applying for that funding. You're definitely home-based.
I'm home-based, but there is also maternity funding for if you're composing for film or writing, or if you have a project. So as well as the touring one as well. So yeah, there are sort of options. But yeah, I'm not intending to go on tour. But having said that,
we'll see.
You never know. I mean, if my sort of ideal scenario would be, I mean, the MD stuff is really amazing, and you can do that without actually going on tour, or just find a band who's not like constantly hammering it.
So, an absolute dumb question. MDing that's literally just making sure that everything sounds as it should do and putting the right pieces together, right?
Yeah. So the difference would be so say I was playing with Birdie, the MD would send me the guitar stems and be like, you're playing this, you're going to play this. Most of the time these are the guitar parts, do your own thing. Whereas and they choose the band, they put the band together. So when I was with Nakane, that was my role. So we were a 3-piece. So the MD sort of like puts the band together and tries to figure out how best to make the record work live. And it's just a lot more responsibility.
And it's all kind of front end heavy in terms of you've got to create the machine that's going to work night after night.
You create the machine, and with Nakane there was a lot of backing track, so you're sort of working with Ableton Live, and so my live setup was like Ableton, 2 keyboards and guitar. So it was
nice simple setup.
Yeah, like a spaceship. But I loved that. I loved
Did you have
like
a cape
the challenge of it. Yes,
well?
Good. A leather cape. Yeah, I'm happiest when I've got like a million things to do. But we were just a 3-piece, and then the drummer had quite a fairly simple but quite electronic setup. And, but then with Birdie it was like a 6-7 piece band, and it was a completely different affair. So it, you know, it changes all the time. But working with technology was kind of how I only was able to do 2 gigs to promote my last record, True Love, one of which was at Space Rocks. I don't know if you know, heard of Space Rocks. It's like I have a friend at the European Space Agency, and I did a video in collaboration with them, and then they did this big like space festival in London, and I played in front of Tim Peake and Brian May. It was
No way.
Yeah, pretty cool. Professor Brian May. Yeah, it was really good fun, and that was it. And then I did one other gig, but that's all I could do really. But my setup was very like, it's become very. I've moved away from guitars, and it's sort of become much more electronic and synthy and computery, and so that's like my new challenge, working with technology and all that stuff. Yeah, which is kind of the future really. Because as I'm teaching, I'm trying to sort of get the message across that there's no getting away from technology, and especially in live touring.
Yeah.
And especially now that live touring is really like the main income stream for most people, and who knows how Brexit is going to affect that. I think I have a feeling it's going to make it a bit harder, but we shall see. So yeah, so kind of interested in how technology has become like so like integrated in our lives, and how that has affected the way that we sort of make music and produce music. Because instead of being in like these incredible studios like I was with Ash, you know, now it's like everything's done in the bedroom. I produce everything, and then I'll go to a studio to mix it. And my main collaborator on the last record lives in Bristol, so it's just sharing files and doing it that way. And I really miss, God, I'd love to be in a residential studio and make a record, but I just don't think that budget is not available to people anymore.
Do you think that change in process changes the kind of record that you make? Because I'm thinking of, do you remember Postal Service? Ben from, I can't remember who it was. Ben from Death Cab, and can't remember the name of the other guy. Anyway, they basically did this record, so the music guy would do the music and then send it to Ben, and he would record the vocals. And that was in, I guess, late 90s, maybe early noughties. But you're saying everything has kind of transferred over to that kind of way of doing it, unless you were really huge, multi-million seller. Yeah,
and unless you've got like a label investing in your album, so giving you a budget basically to work with, which is very rare for I'm just talking about medium level bands. Yeah, and it absolutely does affect the kind of music you make, I think, and you don't have that. Just the you know, the idea of like when David Bowie made his sort of trilogy of like Low Heroes and Lodger, it was within such a short space of time. So you would do like a month in this one place, and then put it out, and then a few months later you do the next one. And to have that sort of like the space where you can sort of disappear and bring a couple of like key collaborators, so you'd have your Brian Eno and you'd have your Robert Fripp, and they would come in and you would be focused, and that would be the only thing that you'd have to do, and you knew that there was an end point. Whereas I think now there is no end point, because you can go up to your bedroom and tinker after dinner, or you know, there's no, unless you set your own self-imposed deadline, but you're working around people like got day jobs, people are teaching, you're working around people's schedules, who like musicians have to do so many other things now, and you don't get that focused time, and I do think that negatively impacts the creative process, and who knows what amazing stuff you could come up with if you were in that sort of creative time zone. And that's what I think, that's what I really miss, that isolation. So now you're just at home, then I can pop out and get, you know, a coffee whenever I want and make a phone call, or Facebook's just, you know, just a click away. Whereas, you know, when I went to Italy and did that record, it was truly like the middle of fucking nowhere. If you wanted to get someone, you got on the motorbike and you went for a ride to get a coffee, and most of the time all the shops were shut. So you had that, like, it was just you and the music, and now I feel like life is everywhere, and this
all the time.
It's just one of the worst things that's happened to my creativity. it's
easy distraction.
It's very easy, and kind of like your attention span shortens, and like the idea of like these like long-term projects, you know, it's appealing, but I think ultimately you shouldn't work on anything for more than 6 months. And with True Love, my last record, it took me 5 years to write that fucking record, to get from beginning to end, and it's the best thing I've ever done, and I'm super proud of it. But I never want to go through that ever again. It's like, if I do another record, it's going to be like, right, we're doing it for a month, nothing else matters. This is it. And to be able to like sort of make that work means you really have to want to do it, and it costs money. It costs money, and if you don't have that budget and you're paying for it yourself, like, then you have to spend a lot of your time making that money, and suddenly it's impossible to achieve.
It's less easy to spend.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's always sort of been my catch-22, but part of me thinks that maybe that's just the way that I like it. I mean, I've never really wanted to be like push myself on my own out front, so it's convenient for me that I can only do 2 gigs because I'm on tour with someone else. If I didn't have that, would I put all my energy into going on tour with my solo stuff? I don't know. Who knows?
It's about constraints and kind of knowing how you work best, isn't it? Because like in the residential studio scenario, your constraint is that everything is focused on doing this. This is costing us money, like you just said. This is costing us money. We need to have something at the end of this. And so get off Facebook. And let's just concentrate and get our heads down and do something. We've got to do something. And regardless of whether the first thing is good or the second thing is good, we're going to keep going until we get something that is good, or we're going to get to the end of the time and at least we'll have tried all the way through. Whereas when you can tinker, it's, you know, you're removing massive amount of constraint, and also pain is quite a good motivator. Like, it's costing me money. Or I'm having to focus and exclude loads of other things that I don't.
And that thing of like, oh, we've only got Robert for one day. Or he's only here for a few hours. Let's fucking get on with it. Whereas now, everyone's available theoretically whenever you want. So like, if I'm doing music library writing, or my friend Alex Thomas, amazing drummer, has his own studio, all I have to do is like, Alex, are you home? Can you quickly send me this drum part? And it's amazing, because then you get that immediacy. But I know that he's sort of, I can do that at any time, so you don't get that precious, okay, we're all here together, we've only got an hour, let's do this. And it's amazing what you can do with constraints and time constraints. Even if you had like a week in the studio, you could write an album, or certainly write the bones of an album come out of it, and there'd be
a coherence as well.
Exactly.
And like, going back to does it make a different record? Yes, it does, because there'll be themes going through everything that you write in that pod of time that you have there.
Absolutely. Because at the end of True Love, there were songs that I'd written, you know, I was singing about. It was a big heartbreak record, and by that point I'd already met my boyfriend, and I was like, I'm fine now. You go out and play those gigs in a completely different mindset.
And that's fine, because it's a different interpretation maybe of the song, but trying to sing a vocal on a song about heartbreak when you just got together with someone else is like jarring a little bit.
It's definitely something to be said about
what's my motivation.
You know, you've just got to, think these days it's finding that balance, and if you can like find the team to work with. So I'm finally got to a point where I feel like I've got my team.
Yeah.
And I know who my people are to work with, and it takes a bit of time to find those people, and then I guess, you know, however I write or however I do it, even if it's a sort of digital back and forth, I know that whatever they give me is going to be amazing. Yeah. I just wish that I was in that position where, you know, I had the time to be like, I'm going to take everyone to an amazing residential studio. I'm just going to have the best fucking time, and we're going to write something amazing. And that's the kind of, I kind of feel like unless I do it that way, I don't really want to do it.
Do you think the way that people are consuming music now is kind of just sorry about that, smooth, but it's going back to the way that if you're writing music sort of separately, there isn't, as you said, that theme going through it. But it's like I know lots of people that don't listen to albums really anymore. I mean, I still do, but apparently I'm weird for doing that.
Because you're old.
I know.
You're about 8 years younger than me, but you're still old.
Right.
Compared to the kids.
Yeah. What's your take on that the whole new way people that consume music?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of consume music like that now as well.
Yeah.
I don't go out necessarily looking for new music to find. I'm sort of much more interested in soundtrack music these days, and I do take recommendations from people. So like if Nakane told me to listen to something, I would listen to it, because he's got very good taste in music, and it is very much like a track. It's a track by track thing. It's not so much a full album. I don't really consume music like that, and I don't know how I feel about it really. I don't know if I find it sad.
Yeah,
I think
it's just the way it's gone,
the way it is, and I think people still do value records, the 10-track album, but I think more and more people are releasing EPs, so like 6 tracks, 5 tracks, and I think the band Foals said something about this, like the way they sort of objected to the time it takes. So there's still that traditional, you do an album and then there's like a 3-4 month lead up, radio and promotion, and they were sort of saying by the time you get to tour it, you're already distanced from it. So the way that music is consumed, if the live can reflect that, so like if you can write a 5-track EP and then go and play it live, you're more sort of it makes more sense, and there's, you know, the way that the promotional aspects of music has changed as well, so I don't necessarily need that promotional run up, or is radio that important? I mean, yeah, actually in some ways yes it is, but it's not just
in the way that it was.
Not in the way that it was.
It's changed maybe its function.
Absolutely, and you think about like where do you get seen? It's one TV show, it's Jules Holland, and everything else is not there anymore. So it's not just the music, it's the way it's promoted, it's the visibility, it's how do you find bands, how do you find new music? Is it just New Music Friday on Spotify, or are you gonna wait for an algorithm to tell you what to listen to, or do you go out looking for it? Can you afford to go out and listen to lots of new music and watch lots of bands? And you know, there's so many different things about music now. Yeah. And it does seem a little bit kind of overwhelming, because again there's so many options, there's so many ways of doing things. I released my last record through Pledge before they collapsed, and actually it really worked for me. It was like the first time I released a record and I made my money back. And then unfortunately the whole thing fell apart. But then I have friends who go through Patreon, and that seems to be a real success for them. So you can do it the independent way, but then someone like Nakane's being really well supported by BMG, and they're investing in him, and that's really encouraging. I think maybe labels are kind of coming round to that way of like nurturing talent and investing, and not just doing one album and then not following through on the development. It feels like the industry have sort of much more stable in terms of the labels, but there's still a massive problem of music venues shutting down left, right and centre, and bands of a certain level just not being able to get up to the next step.
Because when you were coming up, did you presumably played venues around, because you're West London?
I grew up in Chiswick, and Nightnurse rehearsed in Angel, so you know, all around that area. So we played like all the Camden venues we played, and then upstairs at the Garage in Islington, but we didn't really do any gigs outside London. It was all London, and they were like every weekend, like, without fail. Every week there was a gig, and now a lot of those venues don't exist anymore. But I wouldn't say that the UK music scene is, or the UK touring scene is not universally loved. I mean, compared to Europe, it's really underdeveloped, and it's not as valued culturally as much as it is in Europe. So there's still, you know, in a recession, the first thing to be cut is the arts, and I still don't think people take music as a serious vocation, especially now. I think it's very important to let people know that it's going to be fucking hard. There's no guarantee that you're going to make loads of money out of this. And maybe like in the 90s, so when I joined Nightnurse, people were making a lot of money. I mean, there was a lot of money going around, and I think now it's very different. So I don't know. I hope it gets better. I'm not feeling too positive about Brexit's effect on it. In fact, I think it's going to make it harder for smaller bands to exist.
It's from the sort of touring point of view, getting over
from the touring point of view, because I think on the MU site they're talking about bringing in taxes on merchandise, and just like extra money for filling out visas and merchandise forms. And so if you're, obviously every band that's touring is going to be selling merchandise, crossing all these borders, how many times do you have to pay that? And it might not seem like a lot, it's like £600-700, but you know, that's a big chunk of someone's budget, and it will put people off touring. So, you know, and the freedom of movement that we had with Nakane, because Nakane's biggest territory is in France, and so just hopping over to France, you know, several times a week, and then going on to Switzerland to do a festival, or just crossing over several borders in one day, and I just really worry about how that's going to work, and if anyone has thought about it, and if anyone gives a shit, and with this government, I really just think that's going to be so far down the list of what they are concerned about. And I think in the UK, just culturally, musical and education is really not, it's not good. And it's been not good for a really long time. Since I was at school, it's been like shit. And I don't think it's like that in Europe.
Yeah, I don't know what the musical education is like in Europe. Do you know any?
Well, I know that much like Ireland, I think, you know, there's tax subsidies for artists and musicians, and I think France has a similar. And I just think, like, being, you know, telling someone that you're a musician, maybe here would be like, there's still that connotation of, oh, you're a bit of a dosser, or you don't like to get up early, or, you know, drinking a lot, and you know, there's still that association of like, it's not taken seriously, whereas I definitely would say in France, being an artist or a musician is you have a lot more respect. And I don't know why that is here. I think it would be an interesting thing to look into. But I do think, like, especially conservative governments, I mean, rather embarrassingly, you had the Tony Blair Britpop associations, Noel Gallagher, and all that, but at least there was some kind of like awareness that, oh, okay, Britpop, this is an economic boom for the country. Whereas I really think with the Conservatives, there's just no creative sensitivity amongst them. It's
not really on the radar, is it?
It's not on the radar at all, and I think, you know, people are really missing out, and it's a fundamental part of education. I think it's having that ability to be creative, and it's not all about just grades and numbers and targets. Creativity is so like fundamental to being a good human being. And you can see that in the college that I'm teaching at. I mean, you know, good people are drawn to being creative, and communication is absolutely key for that. Like, just to even be able to get in a room with people and make a noise, and the communication and the social skills that go into that, I think it's just fundamental. And also the therapy of like writing lyrics and expressing yourself, and writing songs is just like, it's like meditation. It's as important as a spiritual connection, and I think it hugely benefits like young people, and it's just not taken seriously. But anyway, that's my political rant. But it's not going to get any better for 5 years, so.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, they're talking about putting in a tax for like entrepreneurs and stuff. So at the minute, if you build a business and sell it, you get taxed at 11%, and they're talking about putting up to, I can't remember what it is, like 30 or 40%. So it's for the people who, I mean, it's the same when you're building a band. If you're doing a band, doing a business, doing anything like that, you are fundamentally doing the same thing. You're creating something, and you have to work. You have to push yourself forward all the time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if you then don't support the people that are doing that, because so if you build a business, you're also giving jobs to other people, security to other people, and making money for the country already. If you put people off, they're just going to not do it.
Yeah.
It's the same with making being in a band harder.
Yeah.
It's just not going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, the musical output of this country has been is pretty damn good, I'd say. And if that then goes, what the hell's going to happen then?
Well, I think it will become like something that people who can afford to do it. And I've worked with musicians recently who are in their 20s, late 20s, who still live with their parents. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's the only way you can make it work these days. And it's interesting talking to students about, you know, so how are you, you know, wanting them to get out there and watch bands and see as many bands as they possibly can, and whilst they're in London, and they're like not going out because they don't have the money, because it's really expensive to go out to see gigs, and especially if you're buying drinks. And something's just come in, I think Sadiq Khan, the Music Venue Trust, they've reducing business rates for music venues because they have gone up.
That,
so then they had to make money by putting drinks up and ticket prices. So stuff like that will really help. But yeah, that whole thing of like, you're in London, you should be going out to see bands every single fucking night. But suddenly it's kind of like people are being outpriced, and these things aren't accessible in the way that they used to be. And then my fear is that it'll be accessible to the ones who can afford it, and they aren't necessarily. You're just not going to have that equal playing field.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's answers to all of this stuff. So it's just about finding the answers and shouting about it. And Music Venue Trust, I'm a patron of them. They do amazing work. And then PRS Foundation have amazing initiatives to support people who really need it. But yeah, it's just making these things known and talking about these problems, and hoping that, you know, someone will listen and try to help, who has power to help.
And the making that funding known is pretty crucial in someone even thinking, oh well, this might be an option for me.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I want to make music, but I don't have the money for it, so I'm going to go and do X or Y. If they knew that there was a possibility of a kind of leg up to get on the ladder, then they might be more inclined to do it, and therefore it makes it even more crucial to...
Yeah, the problem with some of that funding is that you do already have to be at a certain level.
Right, okay.
So I do feel like if you're a new artist, you like you were saying, you do have to do so much yourself. So you need to get those Instagram and Twitter followers for people to, like, I'm not by people I mean industry, to look at you and take you seriously, or you need to have a live following. So, and you can do that yourself these days. I mean, it's quite straightforward. You can get yourself to a certain point where you're like, right, I can't get any further, but I've done this much, I've got this, I've put out this EP myself, and I've got this many followers, and this is my live following now. Or I've had a few like radio plays and like Six Music support. Now I need help. And you don't have to go the traditional management way. Having management isn't the answer to everyone. Having a label isn't the answer for everyone, and in which case you can get that funding. So yeah, you have to do a certain amount. You have to get somewhere first. Get a little bit of press attention, and it's perfectly within everyone's means to be able to do that yourself these days.
Yeah. You can just do it with one of them.
Just do it with one of them, and that doesn't cost that much money.
If they record when you want them to record.
It looks like it still is. Fingers crossed.
I feel like I've been quite serious. Maybe it's the cold. It's giving me.
Yeah.
That's giving me an edge.
Right. Maybe it's just our questions.
Yeah.
Because we ask quite serious questions.
Yeah. We've got to figure out some more funny ones.
Yeah.
But it makes for interesting listening, watching. And I think it's about, you know, there's enough frivolity, there are enough cats in teacups and things on the interwebs.
Yeah.
If you want to watch that, then don't watch this.
Yeah. These are very serious times.
Thanks so much for coming in.
It was a pleasure.
It's been amazing, and
thank you.
I know you were a little bit nervous that you weren't going to be guitar geeky
No,
enough.
this is good, because
there was no guitar geekery at all.
Absolutely no guitar geekery.
No.
Yeah, brilliant.
Maybe we should ask some more of those kind of questions.
I've actually brought some pedals in that need fixing.
Need fixing?
Oh yeah, that's right. No, Kendra did say that you needed.
But one of which you might find sexy. Everyone finds this pedal sexy. It's my hat.
It's a nice hat.
It's a stolen hat. So that's one of my broken bib muffs, which Tim Wheeler gave to me. It's been modified or something. That's my original big muff, which just has stopped working.
So this is broken because it doesn't...
So yeah, that's just that. That one, I don't think it's just stopped working. I don't know why. And then I've got my Boss Chorus.
I love those pedals.
Yeah.
Very nice.
It's an American one, and annoyingly. But it's
Oh, the LEDs.
LED's gone, and it's just like dusty. I just don't know
so
if
is it
needs...
kind of crackly and that kind of stuff?
It is a little bit crackly. So yes, especially on that knob, and I don't know. I feel like it just needs a bit of a clean. It needs a bit of love, and because I might sell it. No, I know. I might sell it, but I might not. But
give me a shout if you do want to sell it.
Okay.
Just as I said.
Okay.
Have you found, like, going through like your career, how But have you had any sort of go-to things that have stayed with you all the way, like pedals, guitars, amps, that kind of thing, or has it changed quite a lot depending on gig and that kind of?
Yeah, it has. God, it has changed a lot, because with Ash it was like God, what were they called? Matchless amps.
DC30s or something?
Maybe
combos, big
it was a
combos?
combo, yeah. So Tim had a big matchless one, and I had a what's the other? An Ashdown amp that I used for ages with a 1, 2, 3 foot switch, so clean, semi-distorted, big solo distortion, and a pretty simple pedal board. Really, I didn't really have that many effects, whereas Tim had the wah and all this space stuff. I had a micro synth that I used to use pretty much non-stop, and it was only the last few years really I started to get a bit more interested in like soundscapey noises. So I use Strymon for pretty much everything. Timeline.
Yeah.
I've used and the Big Sky, and the Eventide Black Hole has been pretty amazing. And then I use for distortion, I have my OCD is standard.
Yeah, that's one of my favourites.
Across the board. And then I had a DD6 Boss, the delay pedal, which you could hold down and loop. They're pretty amazing. So I kind of pretty much have the DD6 on, just on, standard. And then I used this for a while, but then ended up putting my keyboards through this Boss Chorus. And the Strymon Deco pedal is fucking amazing. So that's become, so it's kind of like a doubler, but they can also phase as well, and it's really beautiful. And you can hold down one of the pedals, and it'll just do a real big sweeping, beautiful sweeping phase thing. But it can also sound really wonky and weird.
Have you tried any of the Chase Bliss stuff?
No.
It's mind-bendingly complicated.
Right.
It's just like almost standard stomp size things, but it's got loads of dip switches on the back, which you can assign different things to different. It's really very complicated, but they're very, very good.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you run into any.
Okay.
Definitely give them a lesson. Actually, I've got one in the other room. You're welcome to have a play with.
Yeah, no, I'm always looking for like just sort of more weird stuff at the moment. Just sort of fuck the sound up and mess with it rather than
traditional.
And then also just kind of inspired by Leo Abrahams, using Ableton and sort of like digital guitar pedal chains to sort of affect the guitar in that way. So I'm doing a lot more like composing and soundtracking stuff. So that works very well for that world. And so every project there's a different sort of formation of stuff. But I'm trying to get into that. I was in a habit of finish a project and sell what I don't need, and now I'm very much in a kind of trying to build up. I just want to keep
the nice sounding stuff.
Yeah, because I'm doing some recording sessions. I'm playing with on Imelda May's record, and I just did a mad session with her before Christmas, and it was just me and Ronnie Wood playing in the studio together, which I was not expecting. I was playing bass, he was playing guitar, and that was quite mad.
Yeah, surreal.
Very surreal, and he was really lovely, and it was just amazing. So I mean, I'm not like a huge Stones fan, but you can't help but be like,
I mean that's like a different level.
So so I'm kind of trying to be like, all right, hold on to something, because in studio land you can just turn up with this like, how about my Boss Chorus? Let's try this. And it's nice to have like sort of weird. I like pedals to look kind of like almost like brutalist, and that's why I like your designs are great, because you just don't know what the fuck it is. There's no like obvious branding on it, or you know, a sort of what's the ubiquitous pedal?
Tube screamer.
No, the make of who did the microsynth.
Electro Harmonics.
Yes. So like trying to scrap, like, because at one point every single pedal I had was Electro Harmonics.
Right.
So trying
they did make some good pedals.
So they've got some amazing pedals, but I'm trying to like involve more like sort of weird, wonderful pedals from different planets at the moment.
There's a load out there.
There is a load. I mean, I guess Strymon is sort of the new what you just said.
Electro Harmonics.
My brain is completely gone.
That's right, you've been talking for a long time.
Yeah. So now I've got like loads of Strymons, and it's starting to look like sponsored by Strymon. The pedals are just so great. I just love them so much. But yeah, they're very expensive, but it's kind of worth it. The timeline is really amazing.
That was a bit of a game changer. That one.
That's been out a while now.
Yeah.
Because before then it was just like the go-to sort of multi-delay thing was still like the Line 6D DL4, the green thing you saw on everybody's board.
You know what, I had the green one, the purple one and the blue one, and just like got rid of them years ago, and now I'm starting to see them, like Battles, the guy from Battles has the green one.
Yeah.
And I remember so clearly it being like the most amazing thing.
Yeah.
And then Line 6, it kind of wasn't cool, and now it's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I'd held on to it, because there were some really nice presets. But the Eventide I found to be a little bit complicated with the programming. So with the time, and actually the timeline's it's not as easy as I'd like it to be.
Yeah, but it's the Eventide one. It's a bit like that H9 thing.
Yeah.
That because you've got so many parameters, and you have to go on your phone or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it is brilliant. You can get some amazing sounds out of it, but like, the timeline seems, because you've actually got knobs there to do whatever you need to.
Yeah, exactly.
Although weirdly, I found like live, it's so easy to hit the other buttons when you're.
Yeah.
So you like just all of a sudden it's doing something crazy.
Yeah.
And being the technophobe I am, I had no idea really how to get it back.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I've had that experience several times. And also like using those pedals like to put synths through, so it's not really using the guitar as much as they used to. It's more like putting synthesizers through like a Muga Fuga and sort of ring modulators and making them sound sort of really distorted and weird. And the Big Sky is amazing or the Blue Sky is amazing for synths, because it just makes everything sound like the Terminator in a good way.
Yeah, just Arnie coming through.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's kind of where the fun is for me, is putting a synth through a pedal board.
Yeah.
And just seeing what happens.
Always making it sound like something that you've not heard before.
Yeah.
I guess that's the attractiveness.
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah, it's not a word, is it?
No.
Attractivity.
That's an even better one.
That's definitely not a word. The draw.
Yes.
Just trying to make, and going back to the Electro Harmonics, sponsored by Electro Harmonics or Strymon or whoever it is, when everyone has that, because they sound so good, then it just becomes kind of beige.
Yeah, exactly. So like, trying to, especially with in soundtrack world, it's all about it's kind of like finding your way in, so creating all these sort of mad bed of this sort of weird textures, and then on top of that you write your niceness, and then ultimately probably end up removing the mad bed. But I kind of need to have that sense of play in order to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm often just in my little attic making horrendous drones.
But I mean, you've got to get somehow into the place where your creative juices start flowing, haven't you? And so whatever it takes to get you there.
Yeah, exactly.
Regardless, that it doesn't have to be the end point, but you need a jump off point where you're kind of going in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah, and it's kind of why I stopped playing guitar for a while, and because the last record was very synthy, because I found myself just doing the same old repeated patterns, and it just was becoming like really predictable. And then I even started writing with different tunings, so now if I'm going to use guitar, I have like a specific tuning that I sort of go to, so I'm not hitting chords that stuff I know. Just anything to break out of like habit. Yeah, it would be nice to sort of fall back in love with the guitar again, but I fear the sense of sort of temporarily taking hold.
Yeah. Well, it's a new world to discover, isn't it?
It's a new world, and you know, some of it is actually incredibly retro as well. Like the whole modular sort of masturbation is. I have some friends who've like truly lost their minds with it, and for me, I'm like, it's the same thing. It's just like, okay, they make really cool noises, but I can't write.
Yeah.
I can't write anything with modulars. You still need to actually sit down and craft a theme or a melody or a song or whatever. But these are all just tools to help you get somewhere, to get there. Because it's very hard to start with just a blank slate. Yeah. So whatever you've got to do to get there, but yeah, fucking hell, just like the craziness with in that world, you can really lose a lot of money.
And money, time, and
money, time, and relationships.
Yeah, indeed. Would that I had time to do music anymore. I miss it.
You're a facilitator.
Yeah, hopefully.
A really good one at that.
Yes.
And on that side.
Yeah. So now I can sort of perv over your guitar pedals.
Yes, you're very welcome to come and do that.
Marvellous.
Let's press stop on everything that hasn't actually stopped already.
I think these
Please be working.